All right, so we're going to get rolling here tonight. Just a few housekeeping things. I want to get started by acknowledging that we live and work on unceded Sinixt Tumulao. So if you don't know the word Tumulao, it just means homeland in the Sinixt dialects and Silshan. And I'm feeling pretty grateful here tonight, pretty thankful. So I want you guys to take away a word with you here. And it's thank you in the Sinixt dialects and Silshan. So it's lim limmed. So if you guys will all humor me just a little bit, on the count of 3, we're all going to say lim lim together. We're all going to know how to say thank you, and then be able to carry that with us outside the museum after and help spread Sinixt language around. So on the count of 3, we're all going to do lim lim. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lim lim. Wonderful. All right. So before we get to the main event here tonight, just want to let you know we do have some other events coming up on the 10th. We have a Rossland Recollections. We're going to be having Rolly Worsfield here to talk about the Olaf story of the Spirit of Red, so you won't want to miss that one. And then on the 24th, 95% sure it's on the 24th at 6 p.m. as well, we'll have another speaker series. That one's with Richard Gray, who's going to talk about honeybees and other pollinators, so probably like tying very well into the same topics or similar topics we'll be covering here tonight. But you guys aren't here to hear me talk at all. You're here to hear from Mel. You know, she is, besides being like working with ecology or business, whether it's the art that you're probably also here to see tonight, or the incredible activism that Mel's always engaged in. I feel like maybe a bit of a mannequin wearing all of the hats. So without further ado, I want to give up the floor. Please join me and welcome Mel up to the floor here. Please welcome.
Wow, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me, and tonight is special in so many ways. One of them, it marks the official opening of this art gallery. This art I've been working on for a while, and it's something that I've wanted to do here, so that's quite special. And it's also the first time that an art gallery series is combined with a speaker series. That was my idea, and it was like way more than of an undertaking than I anticipated. But I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, we don't do things sometimes because they're easy, and that's the way we learn a lot through our experiences. And I'm also very grateful to be here for this opportunity. So thanks for joining me. So we're here to understand and why there seemed to be a bridge or like sort of divide between humans and nature in this day and time. And I'm hoping that through the talk and through the art show that it's going to create an opportunity to bridge that gap. So just a little bit of an overview. I will share some of my experience and passion for nature, the purpose of my talk. So the connection between humanity and nature, like, is there a connection? Why? What's biodiversity? What kind of like symbiotic relationships there might be between different living beings, and what that concept means. And then, so, it's a topic that may be new to some people, and so I want to explain like what those causes might be, that there is a divide, and why it's important to bridge, or maybe my perspective as to why it's understanding to bridge that divide. What are some of the current challenges? And of course some solutions and takeaways. I'll take some time at the end for some questions, and then officially say a note to open the gallery. And I'd say if you have questions to wait till the end. So here's just kind of a collection of photos from, I was 2 years old with the toad there to up to now, as to some of the different, I've always been passionate about the natural world and the rocks and geology, and different creatures that would live around me, and somehow I ended up becoming a geologist, and I worked in that field for 8 years. And then I wanted to understand, like, not just how the earth works and the, formation of mountains, and I worked for different, mining companies and whatnot. And then I was like, how can I learn how to connect the earth with the greenery that grows onto it? And then I developed a big passion, like the more I started learning about, the different plants, because I focused on going back to school to study horticulture, and I was on the coast at the time. I worked at the Blue Dell Conservatory, and I started my own business later on. And by the way, this marks the 10th year of being an entrepreneur, doing my gardening business. That's also a special year in that sense, and feel very fortunate. And also to have the opportunity to work outside and do these, or have these interactions. So you can see, I guess I can use the pointer. Of like some of the work that I've been doing in some gardens, and some more like nature protection efforts I've been doing, some of the wood burning art that I do, and also taking some time to teach kids art or science via art. So they're all different hats, but I was like, at the end of the day, they kind of all fall under the same umbrella, and that is environmental stewardship. And that kind of like is ingrained in everything that I do, whether it's like just doing my groceries or the work that I do in the garden. It's like, how can I do things in a way that I keep the planet in mind, the environment? And these art classes, I'll get into that a little later. But basically, what better way to understand the interconnectedness between all living beings on this earth, like through art or any type of work that we do. There's always something that we can learn. And you'll see throughout my talk that I'll do some connections with some of the art pieces that I have, but more so, you'll see that there's a little booklet and there's a description of each piece as to why I've had it included in there, and how it relates to the talk as well. And so, basically, the purpose of gathering us tonight is an opportunity to talk and have a visual display as to how to inspire positive change. Also in the hope, and that may be a big one, but that every single human being on this planet, starting with our community, that we can join forces to reconnect with nature. Because if we reconnect with nature, we reconnect with ourselves, and then we can coexist in a more balanced way within all the different ecosystems, and ultimately we can live more sustainably and more harmoniously as well, and we can inspire others to do the same, kind of like a snowball effect. And also by leading by example. There's different topics I'll be covering, and it's like, I just want to share too that this is a safe space, and by no means like anyone should feel guilty, or it's just about learning or unlearning sometimes. There are certain habits that we do, and we'll understand why, and why we do it, or why we are and act the way we do. There's reasons, but it's okay. It's just that we can always do better. Nobody is perfect. And it's just more to like acknowledging the situation that we're in, and if there's anything that we can do differently, now is the time. So first, though, I always like to have an explanation or a description as to what is biodiversity, because that always surprises me, and it's all the living species on Earth, including plants, animals, insects, fungi, lichens, microorganisms. They're all interconnected in ecosystems to maintain and support life on Earth and coexist in delicate balance. The word balance, we might wonder if it's in balance right now or not. But also another word that stands out to me is living species. Well, that includes us as well. And so we're all part of biodiversity. Therefore, we are nature. And so why is it that humans, we think that we're separate, like, from nature? Why are we separate from the rest of biodiversity? Another fact that I find really interesting is that since the 1970s, 2/3 of the world's biodiversity has been lost. And so what is our role in the Earth's ecosystem? I think before we can answer that is, actually, there's something else I wanted to share with that slide, is that some indigenous people refer to these living species or living beings as their relatives. And so how is it that somehow for some of us, these relatives are like commodities? And I understand like there's a lot of topics that I'm covering and I'm just kind of touching a little bit, and the point is to generate conversation. But yeah, I just always think it's interesting that like somehow other living species are commodities. So let's kind of think about what symbiotic relationship is in terms of a concept. The first one that comes to mind when I think about that is that the relationship that pollinators like butterflies or bees have with flowering plants. So the concept of symbiosis is a biological term that describes the interaction between two different species. Now, there can be like 3 different relationships. It's either beneficial, neutral, or harmful. And so to go back to the example with pollinators and plants, they've evolved together over like thousands and thousands of years to develop this relationship, and that is a beneficial one. And if it wasn't, like the pollinators, they get nectar or pollen or floral oils, and in return the plant can reproduce and then continue on in the stage of its life into turning into fruits or the food that we eat. Humans are living beings, or human beings, we have like different relationship with the rest of these species. And you know, I was trying to think like some example as to how our interactions can be beneficial for nature, or is it neutral, or maybe we reached a point that it's quite harmful, like what we do, and it's just to keep that in mind. And you know, I want us to think about like not necessarily like the outdoors or the sports that we do, but we seem to get a lot from going outside, and maybe there's ways that we can give back. And maybe that we depend on these other species more than we think, because, you know, we go on in our lives and, you know, run the course for years and years. And so maybe we're more dependent on them, and therefore we could like treat them differently. This is another slide I really like, and it just shows the different pollinators that we have in BC. And there's a couple that are not shown on there, and that's the bat, and there's also ants are pollinators as well. And the point of this slide is that, you know, when we're curious, we can learn more about these different species, and the more we learn about them, maybe the more we'll be inclined to kind of care and see how we're all interconnected. And through some curiosity exercise through an art class, one of the members was curious to explore the lemur. And through some research, we discovered that the lemur is also a pollinator. Of course, lemurs are from South Africa, or they are native to the Madagascar. And so some mammals that are larger can be considered as pollinators as well. And I know it like blew each other's mind. It's like, wow, that's so interesting. And so another thing about this slide is that typically pollinators will pollinate about 30% of the food that we eat. So that's something that's interesting as well. And it's like, and it's not just the food that we eat, it's the food that other mammals eat, like the bears will eat the berries and so on. So it's like quite a vast web of connection. This slide here, gratitude, I just wanted to show another example as to what kind of relationship that we might have with other living species. So like trees or forest, I think that, you know, our relationship, whether it's symbiotic, I'm not sure, but we certainly depend on these plants for the air that we breathe. And so this piece, I called it gratitude. And on the right, it's a zine that I came across, and I thought it was interesting. It's called What If Forests Paid You? And I'm not going to go into details, but I just kind of zoomed into the zine itself. And oops. And it's an interesting graphic here that shows, you know, there's us humans, nature. Well, we know we are nature, so I was like, I'll fix that. I think the person meant forest. And so these are, you know, for us, like resources, services, well-being, are there any arrows going back? And I think, like, yeah, without going into the zine itself, specifically, it's more like, I think there's a time where maybe we have to draw a line or figure out ways to give back. And another interesting scientist that I came across, her name is Dr. Ray Wynn Grant, and I discovered her from listening to a podcast called Bioneers. And she talks about how, you know, not only we're stewards of the land and it's our responsibility to take care of it, but can we learn to peacefully coexist with all the living beings and with each other? And so, why is there a divide? I think through this slide and play, you can kind of see where I might be taking the rest of this talk. And again, it's just like there's a way that we can have all of this, but it's just to introduce a little bit more balance. Because of course we have needs and things that we want to do. So I think it's all possible. So some of the causes that come up, so urbanization and industrialization. So basically when the raw land and different ecosystem gets constructed into just like spaces, homes, lawns, to kind of like, you know, urbanized areas. And again, like, that's okay, we need places to live. I think there's always room to like do something a little bit differently though. And then, so technological advancement, like, of course, there's been a lot of progress in the last 100 years as to like how certain tasks are done or what product is available on the shelves at the grocery store, supermarket. A lot of the progress, I believe, is to address some convenience in our lifestyle because we're busy, you know, we go to work and we're running around and thankfully where we live, the pace in life is a little bit slower, but still there's been some convenience items that have been incorporated in our habits, and I believe that a lot of the time the environment is not necessarily taken into consideration. And so cultural perception, so like I said, some people think we're separate from nature, and then it links up to societal beliefs. So say in a town, maybe not so much here, but say in a big city, well, what your neighbor does might be different than what you do, and then maybe there's the pressure of well, my neighbor's got this perfect lawn, and they've got this company that comes in to kill all the weeds and put this stuff on. I need to keep things tidy. So there's this pressure, but it's I don't know if this pressure is warranted in the sense that there's different ways that we can do things now. Economic prioritization. So I'm just kind of listing those, but really what I want to focus on ultimately is some solution to these causes that pertain to biodiversity. Lifestyle changes, so media consumption, maybe where people are more inside and they are more disconnected. And then social injustice and rising inequality, that's a big one that got me recently because I didn't really connect these dots until another podcast I listened to, and it's some people's situations are different than others, and so I want all of us to kind of realize that, or at least for me, it's I know sometimes gardening and things like that there's a cost attached to it, and not everyone want to invest some money in their front yard or anything like that, and then some people on this planet, what they have to focus on is survival because they're in a poverty state. And so we can't expect them to have the resources to contribute to the environment. They're just trying to survive. And so there's this layer that needs to be integrated into environmental stewardship, and I believe is social justice. How do we help people in the ecosystem to take care of themselves so that they can take care of everything else? I want to share this, so Jane Goodall, I'm a big fan, and she reshared some words that Gandhi said once, and it was, this planet can provide for human need, but not for human greed. And it's been stuck in my head since. Okay, this is kind of just a heads up, there's this slide, and then the next slide is about the current challenges, and then it's wow, there's so many solutions. There's so many, great ways in looking at this, it's not all doom and gloom. But you're, I'm sure, all familiar with the Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, and this is one of the three. But I wanted to focus on this one, and it's maybe more for decision makers in this world and politicians, but it says, we seem to understand the value of oil, timber, minerals, and housing, but not the value of unspoiled beauty, wildlife, solitude, and spiritual renewal. And then, so the photo on the right, this is an artist named Greg Siegel, and he took a bunch of photographs, and he started with his neighbors and friends, and it's just interesting because the whole idea behind his art project was that how can we kind of get a sense of how much garbage or recycling materials we generate in 1 week, and then maybe if we kind of see what it looks like amongst so this family, that's what they've accumulated in 1 week. And when we see it, it's harder to ignore, and maybe it's easier to witness how much we all generate. And on a positive light, I mean, so like what it says on this slide, I think of the consumer as both victim and perpetrator. We are victims of the whole system in a way that we're also contributing to that same very problem. One of the first thing though too that I saw in this photo, and I'm sure maybe my crew at the upcyclers lab can see it too. They're like, oh, they left their egg cartons here. Like, we could use those in our art class, and like, so some of it might be recyclables. And again, it's not to judge, but like, another thing I want to share is like sometimes like upcycling and the lifestyle that I live, it's kind of becoming a bit of an obsession, but in a positive way. I'm like, I go to the grocery store, I'm like, I don't know, I don't really want to buy this, because once I buy that, I'm stuck with that, because I've kind of, like, I still, like everyone else, bring things in the recycling bins and in the garbage, but it's like, I kind of feel bad because it took so much resources to create this little container, and I'm like, there's got to be something I can use for that, or whatever, and I really try not to throw it out or not buy things that I'm going to be stuck with to deal with later on, because I think it's kind of where we're at in this day and age. Like, you kind of have to take more responsibilities. And so some of the challenges that biodiversity has been facing over time is habitat loss, pesticide use, climate change, and then like native plant decline, which is linked to habitat loss. Or, you know, maybe some gardens, like, we incorporate native plants, and I'm so grateful. Like, I see, well, a lot of you are not new to the native plant topic, and we also live somewhere where there's still lots of native plants around. So that's good. But then one that I'm adding to that list is traditional gardening practices. But that's for another conversation, but I'm going to touch on some of the practices that we can incorporate, because, you know, spring is coming, and then the spring cleanup is going to come. I call that the spring switch, because I don't think that nature needs to be clean, or maybe there's less things we can do, so we can enjoy going outside instead. Also, so how do we reconnect? I also really like this graphic. I think it shows it very well. There's actually a lot of solutions, and they're easy solutions, tangible, and maybe you're familiar with some of them. This is one of lyrics from one of my favorite songs, Look, Listen, and Observe. Well, I think the more we look, listen, and observe, and that we're curious, the more we're going to see, the more interactions we're going to have. I don't know, maybe I just can speak for me, because, again, like, my exposure to the outside and like the other living beings is maybe a lot more, because if I'm like working in a garden all day and things like that, but just in general, I just see different things. And so, like this little tree frog, I didn't put it on myself, it jumped on me. And I thought, oh, like, it's just coming in for a big hug, you know, and it was quite special. This here is a little chipmunk, and he was hanging, or she, or who knows, they were hanging out on this tree, and I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if I could see a jump across. And there they went, like, whoop. This is an alligator lizard that was just sunbathing in the garden at the bunker. I don't know if it's the same one over the years. Like, now I'm like, oh, I wonder how many years do alligator lizard live for? You know, things like that. And then I swear, like, you know, they're kind of camouflaged in there, but the more I just kind of am present and out there, like, either these creatures come to me, I don't know, but they're around a lot more than we think. This is a feather that I found on Record Ridge, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, that was just there in the grasses, and I picked it up, and you know, as much as I was mentioning technology sometimes is a bad thing, well, we're so lucky now. Like, I remember as a kid going to the library and putting all this information and figuring out which aisle. I had to go find this book, and hopefully on this page there was some information. Like, with the internet, it's like you can find anything, so it's so much easier to identify what we come across. And there's apps too. Like, I don't have any identification apps for plants and whatnot, but I hear those work pretty good. So anyway, it turns out that this is a juvenile, or a feather from a juvenile red-tailed hawk, and that's like one of its primary wing feathers. And I just kind of circled which one here, because the length here is about 32 centimeters or 28 or whatever. So I was like, oh my god, there's red-tailed hawk on Record Ridge. Who knew? Something else here that's interesting, this is a cane of hydrangea. And I was noticing these little holes, and I was like, oh. So doing a bunch of like, you know, learning about native bees over the last few years, I know now that this was a hole created by a cavity nesting bee. And so at this time, they would have emerged from hibernation. But I just thought, you know, if I didn't know, maybe I wouldn't have seen. And then, so the more we know, the more we see. And then if you don't mind me like sharing this little story here, this is a willow flycatcher bird. And I don't know, it's like, I didn't really like bribe this bird to go on my hand. This bird needed some help. And of course, like, I don't chirp or I don't talk like a bird, and the bird can't talk to me, but like, it's amazing of like observing what this bird taught me. And he was attached like upside down on one of the strings of the railing on my friend's balcony. I was house sitting at the time, and I was like, oh my god, what's this bird doing there? And I thought, oh, he's kind of stuck on the railing or something. So I helped it and I put it on the deck. And then like you can see like his beak is open. And I was like, oh, he's like, and it was like in the midst of the hot summer forest fire times. And I'm like, that poor little thing is like super parched. I'm gonna go get him a drink. And so I just put him there, and I go get a towel and stuff and a little bowl of water, and I'm like, okay, like, you know, maybe you need to have a drink. And well, he wasn't thirsty, he was choking. And the reason I know that is that eventually there was this big black seed in between his beak. And then I just knew right away. I was like, he was going upside down on the railing trying to spit out that big seed that was like unbreakable. And I grabbed the seed and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then it took him a second or two or whatever, and then he went back on the railing as if he was like, oh my god, thanks for saving me. Okay, see ya. And then he just flew away. You know, like, you can't buy that in a store, but everyone has the opportunity to experience things like that. And I feel like the more we experience it, the more I'm like, obviously we're connected. Like, it's not like another bird could have come in and go like this on his back. You know what I mean? Like, we need each other. So this is just like a quick slide to show there's like 3 types of bees, or like of types of nests for these bees, and 70% of bees are ground nesting bees, and most of those bees too, they're solitary. The other about 29 or so %, they're cavity nesting bees. And then the 1% are the ones that, you know, the poster child or any kind of book that you may find in like a regular store, the honeybees. Those these honeybees became the poster child, but they just are the 1%. What about the rest, the 99 other percent? And those are the ones that I think deserve our attention because they need help to survive in terms of sorry, I want to say conversation, but I mean conservation. Thank you. Okay, so basically, other solutions that we can do, aside from being observant and caring more in research, is if ones are capable, maybe you want to turn your lawn into a garden, or if you have a new property, you can consider like putting in native plants. And if you have a lawn, maybe you want to rethink or shrink some of it. There's different ways out there. And then you'll see more biodiversity will come into your yard, like snowshoe hares. Okay, so putting in native plants, there's so many that grow locally here, and there's seeds available in plants. I know our resources are a bit limited, but I have some sources, and the more we can incorporate, the better. And then maybe if there's only like one in particular, we just have to start small, is showy milkweed. The particular species that's native to here is called Asclepias speciosa, and that's an ecotype from here. And then we can help the monarchs. I have a piece in the show, and I'll explain. So butterflies have different patterns depending on if you're looking at the top view or the underside. And so here is the typical idea that we have when we think of monarchs, and that's the underside of the wings, and this is the top. And then they have, each butterfly have 4 wings, 2 forewings and 2 hind wings. And so the piece that I have in the show to shed some light on monarchs is one of the 4 wings, the top view. You'll see it in there. And then there's more of a description about how cool their migration is, and all these sort of things, and I encourage everyone to look more into it too. Another easy thing, and that's free, like if you have leaves or if you have trees, deciduous trees, there's leaves. And so, maybe, one can start with that. It's just keeping the leaves. And the amount of biodiversity that they host, like whether it's like little caterpillars, bumblebees will nest in leaf piles, and then there's like worms that provide food for the birds, and they help keep the moisture in the ground. And the leaves also like help the water kind of slow down to percolate better in the soil. They keep the soil more protected in the winter. Like they're only so precious, and then never mind like bringing the nutrients back into the soil. So I think sometimes we can be overwhelmed with leaves because there's so many of them, but when we think like they're too precious to rake on the side of the road for the city to pick them up, because maybe there's butterflies and rusty patch bumblebees hanging in there, and then we can help address the biodiversity crisis. This is just another list of items that I kind of came up with for ideas, upcycling, supporting different organizations or businesses that do these efforts, buy secondhand. There's a lot of books and podcasts on these topics. I'm going to share some in another slide. And some of those I've covered. And then, so learning through art, I believe, is like the biggest gateway to reconnect and to help bridge that gap. And there's different like classes that I did, and we're already seeing so much benefits from these efforts. Is like you'll see the crew of the Upcyclers Lab. There's a portion of the gallery that showcases their mask that we created with egg carton paper clay that I made, and then we kind of explore these species that they were curious to learn about, or just like upcycling using egg cartons. Like, they're so helpful, and I understand like not everyone is like an art teacher, but just to see, like, there's so many ways that we can reuse the material and come up with like beautiful things that otherwise would end up in the trash or in the recycling. And it's a great way to learn more. And some organizations I share, biodiversity-oriented local organizations or Canadian organizations, and also some to help address the social injustice. There's a group of women that organize on International Women's Day an event in town, and they raise like thousands of dollars for this women's transition house and trail. And then the coins, they also help support Indigenous groups. Some podcasts, Pioneers, I'm so hooked on this one recently. Bud Banter is from the Xerces Society, Native Plants Healthy Planet, French-speaking people, Objectif Nature, and Second Nature. Some takeaways, tending to nature, we're then tending to ourselves. It's good to kind of keep the planet in mind, and maybe some of the choices might seem convenient at the time, but maybe not for the long run. We can have more sustainable habits, and it takes time to unlearn, but the more we do it, the more we want to do it. At least that's the case for me. Environmental stewardship is our responsibility. Together we can make a difference. Reusing and leaves are key. And then the more curious we get, the more we learn and the more we love. At least that's, again, another experience of mine and what the Upcyclers Lab are teaching me. And then leading by example. So that's pretty much the end of my talk, but I can't end without thanking all of you and Skylar and the crew that's helped, Fiona, Sarah, with putting, all of this together and creating this space for us to be here tonight, and everyone who's attending, my precious clients and my friends, Stephen, and did I say the Upcyclers Lab? Like, I'm really excited you're all here tonight. And maybe some of you will meet them. And thank you.
I think before we just get right into heading into the gallery here, we're going to open it up for some questions. Does that sound about right, Mel?
Sure, if anyone have a question, or we can ask question over, like, looking at the pieces through the art gallery, whichever.
The question about the laser pointer is, does it give off heat?
No, but I haven't really used it that much tonight, so I'm good. Yeah, it feels like it's giving off heat is this light. Despite some heavy turns maybe to this talk, like, I hope it's more, it's all good. Like, we got this. Like, we love this place so much. Like, and there's a lot we can do. So, let's see what we can see out there. Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, yes.
I was just wondering, with your upcycling, do you just use environmentally friendly products, or do you upcycle anything that might go to plastic recycling or
Anything.
whatever?
Yeah, so thank you for your question. So the way I interpret upcycling is like, because say for art supplies, if I find art supplies from the thrift store, I'll get, like, because I'm not gonna do my own paint, right? And so to me, I'm like supporting the thrift store, I'm finding some paint, and I'm reusing what's already purchased. And like sometimes it's inevitable, you know, buy certain supplies. So it's not like, you know, I'm perfect and I never buy anything. But really I try to upcycle as much as I can, whether it's secondhand or like the recyclables, and then or what maybe is provided from nature but that's on the ground. So like this winter I picked up a bunch of maple keys and we created little hearts with them, or we created bumblebees with the wings. Sorry, the maple keys were like not feathers, wings, things like that. But I would never like purposely cut I don't know. I'm just trying to like what's on the ground and what's it. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
We have a lot of butterflies, and we thought that we didn't have monarchs around here, that they were viceroys and not monarchs. Do we have monarchs? And is there any way you can keep an Asclepias plant alive for more than a year? I keep buying them and planting them and everything. They grow up for about a year and then they're gone. But I find them very hard to grow in this area.
Right. So Cooney Native Plant Society and some of the ecologists and botanists that guide them, they are working on a big project out of Syringa area to create pollinator pathways. And so monarchs are native to here, and the work and the efforts that they're doing, monarchs are back in the Kootenays. And they're like doing some research, observing the caterpillars and whatnot. And so it's possible to extend their, the reason I kind of want to focus on helping the monarchs too is to help the efforts that they're doing for the monarchs to get back, because right now they just have wherever they've rewilded. For the monarchs, like when they migrate here, they somehow found these areas, but it would be nice to bridge or connect this pathway all the way to Rossland. And so we do.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought we didn't have any, and so therefore what we were seeing couldn't possibly be monarchs, but I think we have quite a few monarchs.
Yes, and then I know growing from seed is quite challenging. They also need to go through winterization, so that will help the germination rate. Kinseed, which are the ladies that are behind the project of the pollinator pathway in Castlegar, they have their own nursery in their yard, and they grow those milkweed plants, and so it's easier to transplant than grow from seed sometimes. So I would recommend taking a little trip to Nelson, and they have a plant sale in the spring usually, and in the fall. So that will help.
What do you say is better, upcycling or recycling?
Like recycling, like putting in the blue bin?
Yeah.
Well, recycling is a great thing for sure, because it's a service that we're able to do, but to me, recycling is kind of the equivalent of the option that we have of putting something in the garbage. Like if we have, an item that needs to go in the garbage, or it's an item that needs to go in the recycling bin. But we've noticed so much value in these materials that we put in the recycling bin. So in my mind, if we can prevent those things to go in the recycling bin in the first place, then you don't need to recycle it. You create a new use for it. So it's not that recycling is bad, it's just that's another, if you go on a deep dive of understanding what happens with recycling depots, not everything that ends up there ends up being recycled, unfortunately. And there's different reasons for that. Whether there's a lid on it, or there's ketchup on the side, or that's just a kind of another topic, but yeah.
welcome.
Thank you.
Well, if there's no other questions, we'll stop you guys from getting to check out those gorgeous artwork. So I'll pull this out of the way here. We do have a catalog up front, so if you guys want to take that, it's got descriptions for all the pieces that Mel did here today. And before we head in there, let's do one more round of applause for Mel. Thank you so much.